From Scripps Sports, this is Griz Insider, sponsored by Albertson Safeway.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Griz Insider here on the Montana Television Network. Alongside the voice of the Griz, Riley Corcoran, I'm Kyle Hansen, and the Montana Grizzlies fall in the 124th Brawl of the Wild, 31-28 to Montana State. And boy, Riley, what a great game. I mean, it lived up to the hype and more. I mean, all week long, really the last few weeks, we've been able to kind of preview this, and you could see it becoming historic, right? This matchup between these two teams. But boy, it was so much fun to be a part of this game, and it just lived up to all that hype and more at Washington Grizzly Stadium.
It did, Kyle. And normally when you have these kind of matchups, sometimes they can't live up to the hype. And really in this game that we follow so closely, we're all used to maybe close games or hoping there'd be a close game. But the fact of the matter is that hasn't happened in the last 5 years, and really only 4 times in the previous 20 matchups had it been decided by 7 points or fewer. This one from the very beginning, you could just feel it was going to come down to the very end, and it was. It was a fourth quarter game. It came down a play here or there. We're going to talk about it here throughout the next half hour, but what a great atmosphere for college football. And I think that you just saw those two teams on the field. It was high quality football all the way through it. And I think that it's a bizarre feeling this year, maybe compared to previous years, to where it doesn't feel like the end of the road. Usually when you lose this rivalry game, it's really tough to get back up off of the mat again. I still feel like there's a lot of promise down the road just because of how high quality both of these football teams are.
100%. That's a great way to put it, right? It just overall was just a tremendous football game. I remember afterwards talking to parents from both teams, from some of the local guys here, and that's what they were saying. That was just a good football game. And you can make an argument that was maybe the top 2 teams in the FCS, certainly 2 of the top 3. And it's funny looking at the stat sheet because it's so even, right? There's a couple of advantages here and there for some of the teams, but it's just like, man, there's no glaring stat here. You can look at a couple of plays, but it comes down to one play, and I think we're both in agreement about this, about what the turning point was for this game that ultimately pushed MSU over the edge.
It really was. It was the pick 6 in the third quarter, and give Caden Dowler credit, and Montana State needed to have that one play to turn the tide, because I feel that in the first half, maybe the Cats were out in front. They got that 10-point lead, and the Griz had to respond, made it a 3-point game. The moment Montana had that 9-minute drive and then forced a punt from the Bobcats, thinking, okay, Montana's the team that has the momentum. They're the ones that are the aggressor in this point. And then the tip pass, interception, everything flipped from that moment. And I think it obviously injected a lot of life into that Bobcat sideline, too. It was one of the only times where maybe the Bobcat offense was a little bit stymied throughout the course of the year, where they were searching for answers, but that gave them the jolt they needed. They made the plays they needed too late. It was just, again, a great football game, but it really came down to just one play. And I think the turnover battle, usually we hate being a cliche here on the show, Kyle, but it comes down to the turnover battle, and Montana made one more mistake than Montana State did, and that cost them the game.
And credit to Caden Dowler because of the journey he's been through, the injuries he's battled through. Billings West product, we like to see the local guys in either program do well here in the state of Montana, so kudos to him for what he's done this season, and of course with that play. And there was just a couple of swings, right? You look at those things where you look at Brooks Davis scoring, but there's the holding call on Evan Schaefer that calls that one back, and Montana has to kind of regroup, reset. And then of course the blocked field goal attempt by Missoula native Zach Cruz, that again kind of gave some more momentum back to the Bobcats. I thought the Grizzlies were kind of right back in it once Eli Gilman broke off that incredible run down the left sideline to score on that touchdown to get him back within 3. I mean, just what a play from him, stiff-arming Paul Brott, and then bouncing to the outside and out-sprinting everybody. I mean, as you mentioned, we were off camera. We kind of take him for granted sometimes when we watch him every single Saturday, but what a special player Eli Gilman is every single Saturday. But it's wild. 7 minutes left on the clock, and the Grizzlies never got the ball back, and that was also the difference.
That was wild to me. I think when Eli Gilman broke out that run, a signature run for him, and I'm happy for Eli because the previous 2 games against the Cats, he was bottled up for the most part. First time ever the Grizzlies lost a game where Eli Gilman had over 100 yards rushing in a contest. And obviously 133 yards. He's close now to Jordan Canada for 4th all time. That was a signature play. You felt at that point, at least in the stadium, all right, here we go. It's going to go back and forth. Can the Grizz get one stop? I never thought, Kyle, with 6:59 left to go, that the Grizz would never get the ball back. And you have to give credit to Montana State because what did they do? They controlled the line of scrimmage that final drive. They converted on 3rd downs, the number 1 third down team in the country. And then also just been able to run the football wherever they wanted to. 3rd and 1, it didn't matter what it was. Justin Lamson was pretty impressive for Montana State in the game.
And to piggyback off that, you have to give a lot of credit to him, right? Because he rose to the occasion, he rose to the event, especially playing in his first Brawl on the road. And man, he was magnificent against the Grizz.
He was. He didn't make a mistake. And in fact, I go back through the game, and there's very few mistakes that Montana State made as a team. But Lamson, 2 incompletions. One of them was on the opening drive. The other was a drop pass. He ran and threw for a touchdown for the 7th consecutive game. And quite honestly, Kyle, I felt going into that matchup the two quarterbacks were the front runners for the Big Sky Conference MVP. And give credit to Lamson. I think that he cemented that, and we're all going to find out, obviously, but pretty impressive stuff. And you got to tip your cap sometimes, as hard as it is to do.
100%. A special game, but both teams still have plenty to play for, and we'll break it all down here on the Griz Insider, but we're going to take a short break. We'll be right back after this.
Welcome back to Grizzly Insider, sponsored by Albertson Safeway.
Well, welcome back into the Griz Insider, and it's officially playoff season at the FCS level. So, Riley, now that the bracket is officially out, we have the top 24 teams in the FCS vying for that national championship in Nashville on January 5th. What caught your eye when you first saw the bracket?
I tell you what, a lot of things. First off, it was a wild Saturday in the FCS.
Yeah.
There were 4 different conference championship games. There were multiple upsets that affected the bubble. The fact that Albany beat Monmouth, they were 1-10 coming into it. Then Monmouth falls all the way out of the field after maybe being a team that could be a seed. That caught my eye, but let's not bury the lead here, Kyle. The number one thing when the bracket came out, and I feel when the game got over on Saturday between Montana and Montana State, was there going to be the possibility that these two could meet yet again? And now it is a very real possibility. I would say for the first time ever that these two could meet in the postseason, that if they can take care of business at home with massive home field advantages, that we could see a semifinal showdown in Bozeman on December 20th for a semifinal. And that to me is, it gets everybody excited. And I think off the top that I would give the committee a lot of credit that you could maybe go through the metrics as much as you want, but they followed the eye test, as what we talked about in segment 1. That was a really quality football game between 2 of the top 3 teams in the country, and they didn't punish the loser. And I feel with the way that game went and the way that you heard the committee talk about the result, that even if Montana came up on the winning side of that, I think the Cats might have still been number 3 with 3 losses. So just goes to show you, and I think that the eye test was certainly passed, and that's at least what caught my attention off the gate.
As you look at the rest of the way, their side of the bracket, in my opinion, is far harder than the other one because, I mean, look at some of those teams on there, and especially the Griz route, the path of least resistance, it is not.
I know, that's a good way to put it, Kyle. It feels like it's loaded on the other side, and I think everybody, the moment it popped up, number 14, South Dakota State. It's like, okay, here we go again. The possibility of 3 consecutive seasons playing the Jackrabbits. And if you're Montana, you have to relish the opportunity to get some revenge because obviously the Jackrabbits win the national title. They knocked the Grizzlies out last year. Ironically, the seeds are flipped. The Jackrabbits were the 3 seed last year. The Griz were the 14. Now they flip things around. South Dakota State's health is going to be a big question mark going in. Will Chase Mason play? Couple teams to watch out for, too, on that side. Again, all loaded on the right. But Sam Vidlac, Stephen F. Austin, they've won 10 straight games. A little bit of a surprise that they maybe snuck in and got a first-round bye. UC Davis getting a first-round bye. I did not see that one coming. I thought, Kyle, that with the win over Sacramento State, that, okay, they would be at home for Thanksgiving. And the fact that they got a bye on top of it, number 8 seed, despite being banged up a little bit. Good luck. They can saddle up with North Dakota State. But interesting just the way it broke down, right? 3 Big Sky teams, all of them in the top 8, and then no one else made the field.
100%. In a situation where obviously if the Grizzlies get past South Dakota State, if they play them, they could see either Mercer or South Dakota. 2 good teams, and obviously South Dakota kind of getting hot after starting the season off kind of rough. And it's funny with the Sam Vidlac deal, they could end up playing Montana State. His younger brother Titus currently being recruited by the Bobcats. So there's all kinds of different little nuances here. The Big Sky Conference, only 3 playoff teams, all seeds, but then they could end up playing North Dakota State as well, and the Missouri Valley once again very strongly represented in this field.
I think so. Missouri Valley getting 6 teams in, and a big question mark for a lot of people was North Dakota at 7-5. And I think the reveal that they were not even one of the last 4 teams in the field, meaning that they were cemented in, even with 5 losses. I think that goes to show you, number one, strength of schedule. Missouri Valley, I don't have a problem with the Valley getting 6 teams in. I think at the beginning of the year, if you would have said Big Sky would only get 3 teams, I think we'd all be a little surprised by that. But Northern Arizona, they only have themselves to blame for losing to Weber State. I really feel like they would have been in the field with the win, but losing that contest, it's going to be wild here to see how these teams respond. And some great stories down the line. Don't forget about Tarleton State a little bit, right? And I think they're upstart. They've got so much momentum down there as far as program momentum, university momentum. They've forced nearly 40 turnovers on the season. They can light up the scoreboard. So that could be a sleeper pick potentially, but I think everybody's looking at those Missouri Valley teams on Thanksgiving weekend, who they match up with. Obviously, Montana and South Dakota State, that's going to be the number 1 matchup. But don't sleep on Youngstown State. I think that there could be two great matchups here in the Treasure State because the Cats would be lined up with the Penguins. It'll be fun. I think that there are some great matchups down the line. Ivy League getting 2 teams in. I know that way rubs some people the wrong way, but let's see. Let's see how Harvard and Yale can do. They both go on the road. It'll be a fun time of year. It's always fun when we see a bracket, Kyle, like we did in this segment. And here we go. Buckle up. Playoff time's here.
Can't wait. Playing for all the marbles and playing for a trip to Nashville. We'll go ahead and take a quick break. We'll be right back on the Griz Insider after this.
Welcome back to Grizzly Insider, sponsored by Albertson Safeway.
Well, we roll on here in the Griz Insider, and Riley, it's been so much fun this season because we've done this show now for 3 years together, and it's interesting when you get past the Brawl, the Wild, the feelings, right, of kind of where the season's at, where the Grizzlies are at. And 2 years ago, when they beat them here, it was kind of like, 2 seed, they might, roll to Frisco. It looked like a tough path then, obviously, with North Dakota State in the way. Last year, they lose to the Cats in Bozeman, and it felt like, the ending might be a little bit sooner. This year, it kind of feels similar to 23, where it's like, they lost to Montana State, so it's similar to last year, but the path is still there. And this is a good Griz football team. They've only got 1 loss this year. And when you look back at the season, it's been a lot of fun. There's been a lot of ebbs and flows, but I still think the sky's the limit for this team.
That's a great setup from the last couple of years, Kyle, because it's the truth of where 2023, I felt that the expectations weren't there, especially after the NAU loss, and then they were able to continue to climb each and every week, and we were all along for the ride with them. Last year, they never really got the momentum, and I felt that, obviously, after the rivalry game, it's kind of the beginning of the end, right? This year, not even close to that. I feel that this team knows how much is out in front of them, looking out that front dashboard a little bit, so to speak, right? They know that maybe just 1 week off was probably something that they need to hit the reset button a bit. And as we talked about last segment, with the bracket coming out, I think they're going to be plenty motivated if South Dakota State is that team that comes to Missoula on December 6th. But, yeah, I just feel that this squad, if we go back to August and really kind of address all of the question marks, 11 new starters on defense. Would Keali'i Ayat be the man at quarterback? He answered that question. Eli Gilman, could he handle that big workload? He's been able to do it. That new wide receiving core of, who's going to fill the void of the Junior Bergen, Keelan White, Aaron Font's group. So it's been great in that regard. I know it'll be fun to kind of go back on season in review, but this team, there's no question about it. They've got a lot in front of them, and it's bizarre because usually when you lose the rivalry, it's hard to get off the mat again. But this team has a lot in front of them.
100%. And I agree with you. I kind of want to start with the young guys, right? With Keali'i Ayat and that offense, them turning into a top 10 offense in the entire FCS, not just the Big Sky Conference. And it's been so much fun to watch because you look at the emergence of Brooks Davis, right? Michael Wortham doing quite literally everything. And I think he's going to be very excited to have a breather here coming up as well because he has done everything for Montana. You mentioned Eli Gilman. Stevie Rocker had some big moments this year. And you look at the Blake Bohannons, Jordan Deaver, Corbin Hendricks kind of emerging, the tight ends emerging, and some of the offensive line kind of gelling as well. The offense was fun to watch. And what was interesting is they found different ways to win games.
Well, that's the calling card, right, of a good team, being able to find different ways to win. And this team was able to pull all the right levers all the way back to North Dakota and then all the way through that wild one against Eastern Washington. So I think that will prove well for them, at least moving forward, being able to win any type of game. And I think the development of the offensive line is something, obviously, they did really good pass protection most of the year. I mean, Montana State, obviously, a really good defensive front. But I think that the Eli Gilman to have over 1,300 rushing yards and to be climbing now towards one of the best seasons in program history, I think for him, really that workload, Kyle, he'd only averaged 12 carries per game his last 2 years. He's close to 20 carries per game here this year. So I think that's been impressive. The wide receiving core. Brooks Davis, he's about ready to break the freshman record set by John Talmadge of receiving yards by a freshman. And what he did on the biggest stage, remember, he had the game-winning touchdown against North Dakota, the development all the way to now. Michael Wortham, you're right. He needs a break, I think, a little bit. But his quickness and what he brings to the Griz, it just feels like they're so close to busting one of those kick returns late, too. So I'm with you. The Grizzly offense, they've been record-setting in multiple ways. It's the first time since 1999 that they've scored 40 or more points 7 times in a season, averaging over 40 points per game within the top 5 in the country. So that unit has done a great job, and I just think Keali'i Ayat, coming of age as a redshirt sophomore, I mean, the development for him from last year to this year really solidified this offense of being elite.
Defensively, they've been also interesting to watch, as you mentioned. 11 new starters, a lot of guys gelling together, whether it be transfers, young guys kind of getting in the mix, and they are one of the best turnover-causing teams in the country as well. So it's been fun watching them also kind of gel together, and they've also battled through a lot of adversity, such as injuries.
They have, and you could make the case that one of their best players in Keon Loud, he's been out since September. So that's big for them to persevere that. I think the secondary has definitely been able to grow up. We have seen some true freshmen play, the Beaner boys, of course, and Kenzel Lawler for his development. I think to be one of the top pass breakup guys in the Big Sky Conference has been great. The linebacking core, those 3 transfers that came in. Caleb Otluski has done really well this year, and Clay Oven. I feel that we haven't talked about 37 enough this year, but he's been very solid, not only in the special teams game, but at linebacker. And then up front, I'm really happy for those guys because the first 6 games of the year, they only had 6 sacks. And then the last 6 games, over 20 sacks. So great job by all of those guys. The rotation piece just shows they have depth. That's another calling card, right, of a championship team. I feel the Grizzlies are deep at multiple positions, and they're going to need it here in the playoff run.
100%. The biggest games are coming up, and it's win or go home here in the FCS playoffs. We'll keep going here on the Griz Insider after this.
Welcome back to Grizzly Insider, sponsored by Albertson Safeway.
Welcome back into the Griz Insider. And Riley, now let's turn the page and kind of look at where Montana goes from here. And honestly, I just don't think it can be understated how much they need this bye, right? Because we talked about it all year long. In my opinion, it was the biggest storyline of the season, playing 12 straight weeks of football, getting the bye in the opening week. And you saw it, right? You saw some of the fatigue. You maybe saw some of the mental fatigue, too, with these guys. A lot of rotation, some injuries. I think this bye could pay dividends for them down the road.
Yeah, I think so, Kyle. I think it's something where we appreciate it from the locker room standpoint. They don't want to make that an excuse or a narrative going into it. But to play 12 straight football games, that's hard to do in this day and age, especially when we talk about that senior class. 27 seniors. These guys have been battle-tested. The wear and tear of their entire careers coming down just to get that mental breather and physical breather. And I think that you saw it maybe stretches of Weber State, Eastern Washington, even the beginning of Portland State at times to where, all right, this team a little bit gassed, and they put their best foot forward against Montana State. But now I think just hitting that reset button is going to be so important for them. Shoot, I remember back in September when we were talking on the flip side, where there were teams that already had 3 games down before the Grizzlies even had 1. They just haven't had a break quite yet. And I think this break could be very healthy for them and needed as they go into the Thanksgiving holiday.
100%. And now as you kind of look forward, like schematically or just on-field performance for them, when you see things that can change, because, you know, coaches talk about this all the time at all levels, really, you learn more from losses than wins. So you end the regular season on a loss, you're still 11-1. This is a very good football team. In your mind, what are some things that you can take from this that, you know, some things are going well, but they're going to have to make some changes too, especially if they do run into Montana State once again?
Oh, absolutely. And I think with the way that the bracket has been set up, it's great that Montana does have a 3 seed, but they're going to have to be on alert right away. From South Dakota State maybe coming in here if they can get by New Hampshire. Then, of course, a matchup Mercer, South Dakota, and then, of course, the Cats. But I would say the things that Montana certainly needs to work on, I mean, from the secondary side of things, right, to play a little bit tighter and to see if they can disrupt the quarterback a little bit more up front. I know they've been getting the pressure, but a guy like Lamson and if Chase Mason's in at quarterback at South Dakota State, those are very experienced guys that aren't rattled. So how does the defense be a little bit more disruptive? And I think that that's the way to do it, whether it's more chaos with the linebackers bringing pressure and whatnot. They'll get creative. Kent Bear, those guys with Tim Houck as well as Roger Cooper, they will dial up some good game plans coming in here. But I do think defensively being more disruptive probably going to be at the top of the calling card for Montana. On the offensive side of things, they have been very solid all year, but I think establishing that run and that consistent running game, maybe between the tackles, is something that we haven't seen as much. Would love to see Michael Wortham get going a little bit more, but I really think that's predicated more off rest for Wortham, just to get that guy, that quickness again, that Sacramento State Michael Wortham that we saw, Idaho State Michael Wortham a bit. So if I'm off the top, I would probably say those 3 things. Disruptive a little bit more on defense, running in between the tackles offensively. Let's get Michael Wortham involved a bit.
100%. These are the biggest games of the year for a reason. Let's see if the Grizzlies can make those adjustments as they aim to make a run to Nashville. We'll wrap things up on the Griz Insider after this. Well, as we wrap things up here on the Griz Insider, everyone's talking about the bye for the Grizzlies, but Riley, it's our turn to take a break and excited to enjoy the holidays with some family. What do you got planned for Thanksgiving?
Absolutely, Kyle. I think that the bye week is much needed for all. Just to hit that reset button, refresh, I think it's the 3 Fs, right? It's family, it's food, it's football. I think it's going to be a lot of decompressing a bit, but also appreciating what we have, of course, and it hopefully is a playoff run, but excited to disconnect a little bit and get ready for a playoff run.
100%. I can't wait. Can't wait to see family. Can't wait to gorge on a lot of food, and as you mentioned, just sit back and watch football as a fan for the first time in quite a while. Well, we hope you enjoy your Thanksgiving. We're going to take a break next week here on the Griz Insider, but we will be back to recap the second round FCS playoff game for the Montana Grizzlies. So enjoy the holidays, and we'll see you next time.